Well, joining me now is one of the most, I think, interesting people in American politics today. It's the head of the Teamsters Union. And Sean O'Brien, before we get started with sort of your life literally in the center lane of American politics these days, the Teamsters in general have a reputation, in my lifetime, of being the less partisan of the major unions. That, while, when I was growing up, most of the labor movement was Democratic. But if there was a labor union that would be open to supporting Republicans, it was the Teamsters. Walk me through that. What is that relationship? Why is that? What would you say explains that history?
Well, I think what explains the history is we are one of the largest. We always have been one of the largest, I believe, most influential unions in the country. We've been around since 1903. But we're very diverse. We're a very diverse union. We always have been, and I think we always will be. And, there's no secret that, we have endorsed Republican candidates prior. But historically, we've always went with Democrats. And I think, that I'm a lifelong Democrat. So I was brought up in a Democratic state. So, you always pulled that party line. But history, if you look back in history, it wasn't always that way with the Teamsters Union. I think the philosophy has always been, let's try and work with the people that are going to work on behalf of the best interests of our members. And that's why we're a little bit different than most, because we're transparent, we're inclusive, and we want to support people that are going to support our issues, regardless of what their political affiliation has. And that's always been the case. Pretty much.
If I were to paint a picture of the average Teamsters, a member of a Teamsters union, it's a truck driver. But that is, I think, being very myopic. Tell me, you're actually a very diverse set of workers that are members of the Teamsters union. Walk my listeners through that.
All right. The easiest way to describe it, because it is a very complicated description if you try to go sector by sector. So building trades, you're a carpenter, or electrician, you're a plumber, right? Everybody knows that's what you are. The Teamsters, the best way to say it, and I say it all the time, we represent everybody from airline pilots to zookeepers and everybody in between.
I remember, you guys have been helping to organize Amazon workers.
We
right?
have, yeah. We've actually taken that fight on. We joined forces with Amazon Labor Union, which successfully organized in New York. And, there's no secret that we have a longstanding bargaining relationship with UPS, which is was the largest package delivery companies. And so it was a natural fit for us to join forces. And we've been organizing the direct employees and also organizing the third-party leasing arrangement, which is a scam and a shell game, which we all know about. So that's been our biggest focus. Amazon, not just to the Teamsters Union, not just to, germane to us, but they're probably going to be the biggest threat to organized labor because they have their fingers in so many different industries and so many different technologies that could affect us. So,
let's talk about automated robot. Look, Amazon is going hard at replacing the human being.
Right.
They want to replace the human being as fast as possible. Amazon's not alone. They're just the largest entity with the resources to do it. You're trying to protect human labor.
Well, we have to protect human labor because, without human labor, where are these folks going to go that didn't get the opportunity to go to college, that didn't get the opportunity that some people got? And look, AI is probably the biggest threat to the human population. And I think, and I've been focused on this, meeting with people that I normally wouldn't even talk to, because my concern is what effect is AI? Because it's so complicated. But I think what we're going to see with AI and this automation and all these corporations that are falling in love with it, you're going to see the upper management of a lot of these corporations be affected by AI, because they're not going to need all these analysts. They're not going to need all these white collar jobs. So you're going to see a further disparity once that middle layer management is, basically affected and they lose their jobs. You're going to see CEOs' pay continue to grow because of all the savings.
Right.
And my mission is to make sure that we capture that money for the folks that are still working these blue collar jobs and create hopefully opportunity for retraining and new jobs as a result of the implementation of technology. And Amazon, to your point, doesn't care about the humans. They care about their brand and they care about their profits, and that's it.
I'm pretty convinced that the issue of 2028 is going to be, like, if you're a presidential candidate and you don't have a policy on AI job displacement, you shouldn't be running for president.
No,
it's probably going to be the table stakes, right?
Yeah, 2028 is going to be like, so I just did some little bit of research on you because I'm a huge fan, but I'm a little bit more mature because I'm 6 days older than you. I was born April 2nd, 1972.
No kidding. Look at that. All right.
But it's going to be like 2028 has the potential to be like, do you remember WWF? What was that big event they used to have every year? SummerSlam?
WrestleMania and SummerSlam.
It's going to be like WrestleMania. But your point
the Rumble at the end where there was 1 million people in the ring. But anyway,
What's happening right now across the street from where I'm at. But no, look, this is a huge threat to the American workforce. And whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you have to have a solution in support network to support workers whose jobs are going to be at risk, maybe even, extinct. And you're spot on. Everybody falls in love with convenience and technology. We're all guilty of it. We order something online, we hit that button, we want it yesterday. Right. But what cost does that come at, right? It comes at a cost of someone's job.
What is your leverage? So let's take UPS. UPS, a big, the UPS drivers. And UPS says, hey, man, we love these robot trucks. And we're going to have these robot drivers. What's your leverage to protect your human driver?
My leverage is the collective bargaining agreement we negotiated, where we negotiated language that any technological change needs to be agreed upon. If there's a disagreement, it's subject to arbitration. But we also negotiate provisions that UPS has to maintain a certain level of full-time jobs and create full-time jobs as a result of it. So, we're already in stages, and it's been going on for 10 or 12 years, where UPS in the warehouses where we have 54% of our membership out of 340,000 are part-timers to get full-time benefits, health and welfare, pension. So we're very, very sensitive to any type of job elimination, but we're convinced, and we have committees where, because of our collective bargaining agreement, we can identify opportunities to create new jobs as a result of technology being implemented. So that's the difference right now between a unionized company like UPS versus non-union FedEx and or Amazon. We have the ability, because we negotiated those terms and conditions. But if you're a non-union Amazon employee inside the warehouse, chances are at some point in time, if Amazon has the opportunity to replace you with a robot, they are going to do their best to do that. And I got to tell you, I think we all know technology, it's not foolproof. And the best, I always tell people, like, when we're fighting about these autonomous vehicles, which is disturbing to me, and I'm a Democrat, it's disturbing to me when you have governors in California and Illinois and Colorado who say, hey, I want to support working people. I want to support, the creation of jobs. And when you work bipartisan on a state level and you have agreed upon legislation that's going to mandate human operators in commercial vehicles, and it gets to the governor's desk and they veto it, what does that signal?
This just happened. You brought this up. You look, it's like you read my research on you. But I was about, this was very recent legislation, and these were 3 Democratic governors who all want labor support. I probably all believe, would say they're very supportive of collective bargaining. Jared Polis, J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom. What's their explanation for why they vetoed these bills?
That is a great question. So
what did they tell you?
You're probably going to find this hard to believe. Newsom is not a big fan of Sean O'Brien. I've been critical of him because he's in love with big tech. That's the bottom line, right?
You see tech as adversarial?
I see tech as adversarial because the script has been flipped. right? From where the Republicans were 15 years ago. Now the Democrats seem to be holding their seats and falling in love. I call it like Stockholm syndrome. Some of these governors have fallen in love, or some of the Democrats have fallen in love with their captor, right? And they don't know the result, the catastrophic result. I talked to the governor from Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Called him up before because we were getting word that, he was on the fence whether he was going to veto it or sign it into legislation. I'll never forget. I was in Times Square. I was at another event, and I called him. I said, "Look, this is going to be detrimental to working people. It's going to be detrimental to CDL license holders. It's not just a union issue." I go, "There could be like 250,000 people affected by this." He's like, I love the Teamsters. I go, "Okay, this is where I've always supported you on everything you've done."
Yeah. Here it comes.
I don't know whether that's true or not. I'm saying to myself, he says, "But I just can't be with you on this one." I said, "Really? This is the one that really matters. This is the only one that matters." I said, "Where are you going to put those 250,000 or I might have said 200,000, 250,000 people that lose their job? Where are they going to go?" I said, "And furthermore, I drove a truck my whole life." I said, "The best technology and the best information is the human heart, instinct, and their brain. They can react quicker than any computer. What are you going to do when you're platooning a vehicle weighing 240,000 pounds and a malfunction kills a family of 4? Are you going to be okay with that? Because I certainly am not going to be okay with it." And he says, "Oh, you know what? Don't worry about that stuff. It's 10 or 15 years down the road." I said, "No, it's 10 or 15 minutes down the road."
Yeah.
But that's the perplexing stuff for us. And that's where, I get criticized sometimes because they'll say, "Well, you're a labor leader and you're criticizing the Democrats." Well, I'm a labor leader that criticizes the Republicans. I'm a labor leader that criticizes the independents as well. When you're not making reasonable decisions on how it's going to affect working people, more so your constituents who, if they don't have a job, where do they go? They go on the street. They go on the dime.
Look, I look at your job you have one job, right? You're there to protect your workers. You're there to do that. I get that. You also have to be responsive to technological change. What's your recipe? If you could go back to Polis, you could go back to Pritzker and say, "Look, I get that you want to be able to innovate. You want to be able to allow automation to have a chance in some areas where maybe automation will be better in certain things. You see things with microsurgeries, right? That maybe having a robot do it is better than the human hand. I think we all accept that. Where's your line on this? And
So
where do you feel
this.
where do you feel like you have to show some flexibility?
That's a great question. I think there's a perception out there when you speak against anything that has an effect on jobs, you're viewed as an impediment, right? And that impediment is what? That impediment is the bottom line of a balance sheet and the profits of that company and/or technology. We do not want to be an impediment that is going to potentially maybe improve our members' jobs, improve productivity, improve worker safety. We are going to embrace technology because we have since 1903. I mean, think about what's behind me, 2 horse heads and carriages, right? What technology that we had to deal with was a combustible engine that came and created vehicles that we got off of horses and got behind steering wheels of trucks, right? So we're not trying to be an impediment. We know what's coming. The problem is there's a difference between implementation versus conversation and input. So in other words, there seems to be a disconnect where, hey, we're just going to implement this technology without any consideration of having a conversation to say, hey, look, this is what we're thinking of doing. This potentially could be the effect. What do you think about this technology? It would say, great. However, where can we create jobs? How is this going to affect workers? Those conversations aren't happening. It's, we don't want to be an impediment, but we want to be part of the solution to a potential problem as a result of it. We know it's coming. Just give us a seat at the table and hear our point of view. And like we've seen in the grocery warehouse industry, there was a big push, and there is a big push in these big grocery warehouses where we represent, thousands upon thousands of workers nationwide, the big grocery chains, where they did implement robots to select orders.
Mm-hmm.
That did affect our jobs. However, we created jobs as a result of it. Who's going to program these robots? Who's going to maintain these robots? Who's going to do quality control? So we were able to create jobs because we had those conversations and we maintained the workforce. We do not want to be impediment to anything that's going to potentially make life easier, but we can't embrace something where we don't have the knowledge and or a solution to the bigger problem, which where do you put these people to work?
Let's go back to the 90s and NAFTA and what was in anticipation of what was going to be huge displacement, massive job shifting, outsourcing overseas. Some of it was just outsourcing from the north to the south, right to work states versus so-called right to work states, et cetera. What were the mistakes that your predecessors in the labor leadership world made then that you don't want to repeat as we bring AI on board here?
Yeah. So again, we took people for their word, I think, back then. Think about it when NAFTA came into effect, Clinton introduced that. We were very supportive of Clinton in the 92 election. Right. Oh, this isn't going to hurt. It's going to help. There'll be a residual value as a result of these trade agreements. I think we trusted.
Yeah, you guys were the least, if I remember, the Teamsters were the most supportive of NAFTA compared to the other unions, right? Because
initially.
Yeah.
Initially, we were very, very, after that, we were, anything that was introduced, I think it was PNTR after that, the China trade deal, and I think CAFTA was after that. After getting burnt on NAFTA, the skepticism was at an all-time high. So I think to your question, what mistakes were made that I don't want to make, that my predecessors made? They trusted the people that we supported at that point in time, where I'm not suggesting you shouldn't trust people, but just because someone has a D next to the name doesn't mean they're making good policy on behalf of American workers. And I don't think it was well thought out and or explained, or maybe it wasn't explained to with all the facts associated with it. So that's why we're being different. We're different nowadays under our leadership, because I'm having those conversations with both sides. If the Republicans introduce something that says good for us, I'm going to go to the Democrats and say, all right, the Republicans are telling us that this is good for our members. Is it good? In your opinion, is it good? And if it is, why is it? If it's not, why is it not? So I don't think any of those discussions happen. And I think people just back then, took people for their word. I mean, I'm not going to do that. I want to know exactly what the effects are going to be. And look, hopefully they're going to be honest and open with us. If I'm going to take a hit, tell me I'm going to take a hit. That way I can be prepared to defend it. But if you're going to be, less than honorable in telling us the effects and or your intentions, then that's a problem for the people that tell us that.
There's a reason results matter more than promises. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan has become America's largest injury law firm. For the last 35 years, they've recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. It includes cases where insurance companies offered next to nothing, short of shortchanging, seeing if they could get away with it. And Morgan & Morgan fought back, and they won millions. In Pennsylvania, one client was awarded $26 million. It was a staggering 40 times the amount that the insurance company originally offered. That offer, $650,000, whatever it took to sort of get away without paying. So with more than 1,000 lawyers across the country, Morgan & Morgan knows how to deliver for everyday people. So if you're injured, you're looking for a lawyer, check out forthepeople.com/ToddCast or dial pound law, pound 529 on your cell phone. And remember, all law firms are not the same. So give Morgan & Morgan a look. Their fee is free unless they win. When we look at, you've pointed out how close in age we are. And in some ways, when you and I were growing up, Democrats were the party of labor, Republicans were the party of business. As you and I became adults, the Democrats started to become, they're basically the Clinton wing of the party became the party of business also. So then all of a sudden, and there was this moment where it looked like labor was shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Then I think the Great Recession sort of awoken to people, right? And suddenly people realized, oh, job protections, maybe I can't trust these entities. Where would you see was the setup a mistake back when we were kids that labor shouldn't have been tied to one party, and frankly, business shouldn't have been tied to one party?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we all had a do-over, so to speak, knowing we know now, I think most of us would adopt the philosophy that we're trying to adopt. Now, for my union, I can only speak for my union.
Being Teamsters transactional rather
Teamsters
than D and
transactional.
R, right?
Yeah. Right. It's just who is going to make decisions that are going to support working people. I mean, it's not hard. It's pretty simple. And I think oftentimes we complicate too many things. But I think if we had a do-over, it wouldn't be just, embracing one party versus the other. And conversely, one party shouldn't embrace big business versus working people either. I mean, I think both sides are guilty of that.
Right.
And who's paying the consequences for it right now? I mean, you think about these trade deals. These trade deals right now, if you go back and you look at footage of, and again, I don't want to seem like I'm picking on the guy, Chuck Schumer in 1996. He's given a speech on the Senate floor, I believe, or maybe the House floor, saying how bad the China deal is and how we need these tariffs and all this other stuff. And then 2007, 2008, Hillary Clinton's, explaining her policy on immigration. Now, fast forward, the same positions that these folks were taking, 15, 20 years ago is the same policies basically implemented under this administration, although the immigration policy has been a little bit more aggressive than probably people thought, which, again, that's another debate for another conversation. But it's like contradicting at best. So for me and you, we've been fortunate enough to look at what the argument was from the Dems then to what it is now, what the arguments from the Republicans were then and where we are now. It's like, it's so contradicting. Like, who do you believe?
Well, that's my curiosity. I've watched Marco Rubio as a senator started to do this transition, right? The guy who ran in 2010 and 2016 versus the guy you saw run for re-election in 2022.
Right.
Do you believe him?
So I don't know him that well. Okay. But
I don't want to pay. I'm not picking on him, but he's he's an example of somebody that has shifted to being a bit more friendly to your positions. But the question is whether how do you get trust, and is it just rhetorical? Is he only there for the voters?
No. So I agree with you. He has gotten a lot more sympathetic to our issues. I had a conversation with him, and again, I met a lot of these folks at the RNC when I went there. But I had a conversation about a month ago at the White House, and he probably didn't know me from a hole in the wall prior to the RNC, but he came right up to me and he gave me his whole history of his dad being a hotel worker, losing his job. They went on strike, and he said all the right things. And he's like, "Look, I embrace unions. It helped me through my whole, childhood. We led a good middle class life." So he's saying all the right things, and the dealings that we've had to deal with him on, he's been fair. Now whether that's sincerity or politically motivated, the truth always comes out. I mean, so if you had to ask me, how's Mark Rubio? Nice guy, great conversations with him, says all the right things.
When you what do you make of this shift in the Republican Party over the last 10 years? How much of it's been just rhetorical, and how much of it have you actually seen in policy?
So I'll tell you, I can probably go a little bit more. I can probably give a better description over the last 3.5 years and 10 years.
Fair.
Because I come from Massachusetts, right? And in Massachusetts, as you know, especially Boston, that's where I'm from.
I never would have guessed. I mean, you have this
impediment.
You have this Southern accent. I know. I'm shocked. Yeah.
Cowboy boots on too. But, we never looked at it as Dems or Republicans, because how I looked at it, and this philosophy is unqualified opinion, I always looked at people are only a certain party affiliation because of the zip code where they lived, right? 9 out of 10 times, there was bipartisanship on many and most issues. So When I came to D.C. 3.5 years ago, and we had a lot of success working with the legislature. I did 20 years as the head of Local 25 in Boston, one of the biggest locals. And I had great relationships with both Democrats and Republicans. We got a lot of good work done. We've got autism legislation passed mandating private insurance companies to provide services for families with autism. We passed movie tax incentives into perpetuity that's going to support an industry. And that was all bipartisan, did a lot of great work, brought casinos to Boston. So when I came here, I'm like, I'll take the JV, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, the junior varsity template, and we're going to bring it to the varsity game. And we started reaching out across the aisle, talking to people like our age demographic, like Josh Hawley, J.D. Vance, Roger Marshall, a lot of folks that we had a lot in common with, may not agree on everything. And that's how the last 3.5 years, I think the one thing that we've done well, which is always room for employment, is reached across the aisle and had conversations. So for instance, Josh Hawley, when I first met with him, we talked about a lot of issues, told him how many members we had in his state. And we said, we don't support national right to work. We don't support right to work. And he said, well, I support right to work. I'm like, well, tell me why. And we had this conversation. I told him why we didn't. And we put out some, facts and figures. Do you know he flipped his narrative right away and said, I no longer support right to work. This is not good for my constituents. So think about if we didn't have those conversations. And look, not all of them are the success story that,
Look, look, Hawley, to me, I am more and more convinced that it doesn't matter who you elected. It matters what your incentives are. Right. He lives in a state. You just said it. It's a union state. It's a conservative state culturally. But it's a union state. Always has been. And which is why I think that whole, Missouri, the Democrats hung on longer there than because of the fight over right to work.
Now you look at Ohio, for instance, right? That used to be completely blue. Right. Pretty much a lot of industry. Ohio was crushed with these bad trade deals. I mean, when you really think about it. So what we've focused on is, and then this is the example of, my unqualified opinion in the last 3.5 years is you get Senator Bernie Moreno, Republican. I mean, he's embracing, a lot of policies, pushing forward a lot of our agenda because he represents those people that were affected in Ohio. And as a result, I mean, he firsthand witnessed, the demonization of industry in Ohio as a result of these bad trade deals. He's been another breath of fresh air that we're working with. Senator Husted as well, who came in, filling Vice President Vance's seat, has also started to come to that philosophy. Plus, it's an election year.
Right. And he's facing a guy like Sherrod Brown, who I'm sure you do have a relationship with.
We do. And Sherrod Brown wasn't happy that I went and spoke at the RNC.
Right.
And I said, look, I would have gave that same speech had I been invited to the DNC. And, it's funny in politics. And
still trying to understand why you weren't invited to the DNC.
I don't know.
Do you have a good explanation?
I wish I did. But, I listen, I tell people all the time, at my age, when I don't get invited to weddings, I'm okay because I'll just send a check. I don't need to go. But on this one,
it's so funny you say that, right? My wife and I joke about this all the time. You hit a certain age. First, you're younger. You're like, how come I didn't get invited to this? You're older. You're like, God, why did I get invited to this?
So I tell people all the time, look, don't invite me. I'm going to send a check anyways. It's a fundraiser. Just don't invite me. Know that I'm thinking of you. I'll send a donation. Right. But no, I mean, there's some good Republicans coming along that we're having dialogue with. Now, there's some that, no matter what dialogue we have and or case we make, they're just rigid. They're rigid and not going to move. And that's okay too. But, I think the last 3.5 years, the conversations have been very positive and continuing. Even if we agree to disagree on issues, my goal, and I think I would love it to be everybody's goal, especially now. I mean, this is such an awful, hostile, gross time in the United States. When you fail to keep communicating, regardless of those talks are going good or bad, you're failing your job. You're failing your constituents.
What could Kamala Harris have done differently to earn a even co-endorsement from you?
Not run for president. No,
Was
I mean,
it
look.
just it was just never going to happen?
It wasn't going to happen for us. Our members, we did some significant polling. I'm not getting personal,
Okay.
but let me back up for a second. Joe Biden was great to unions as a president. I'm never going to take that away from him. When he came,
he was probably the most pro-union president
he was.
You've ever had. We've had since FDR.
There's
right?
no doubt. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And again, people always remind you of what they've done for you in the past, not what they're going to do for you in the future. And Joe Biden came and met with us. And I got to tell you, I felt bad. I really did, because, I was brought up to be always respectful of people that are older than you. Just always respect the position, respect the person. And, he lost his fastball.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, part of it for me personally was like, it just looks like someone's being propped up and they're not looking out for his best interest. They're looking out for their own personal interest. And then when, he dropped out of the race and Kamala came in, it kind of gave the sense of, it was like a birthright for her to be the candidate. And, that was a big, big mistake, I think, on the Democratic Party. There should have been a contingency plan 2 years prior to the election. And that wasn't there. And you hear all these stories living in D.C., that he was going to be a transitional president. There was a meeting and, he got pushed back from a lot of staff people whose jobs could have been in jeopardy, all this other stuff. I mean, I think, hey, she ran for president. She lost. You can't recreate history, but I don't think she was the best candidate. If I really had to think about, there were a lot more candidates out there that probably would have gave Trump a run for his money.
Would you describe your membership as pretty 50-50?
No, it was 65-35. When we did a polling, we did significant polling. We actually
did 65 for Trump.
Republican, right. Yes. So we did. So I'll tell you, it was interesting. We've never done this before as an organization, but we're out in the field every single day and we're talking to our members, social media. There's so much communication and some of it's not credible. But you could just see members gravitating towards Republicans. And I don't think it was just because it was Trump. I think it's just, the Democrats were in control the last 16 out of 20 years. And what really have we got done? What really did Democrats do for us? Under Obama, we had a Democratic House, Senate, and president. And our biggest issue back then was the Employee Free Choice Act. Should have been a layup, right? Which was basically the PRO Act, right? That didn't happen. And then under Biden,
this was basically the ability to ask for collective bargaining, right?
The ability of an employer to, once there was a majority status, to recognize and sit down and bargain and, come to a collective bargaining agreement. And it should have been a layup, but again, that's part of the reason why our members started defecting. They were seeing time and time again that, the working people's agendas weren't being put forward. I mean, you think about bankruptcy. Bankruptcy laws in this country are antiquated, and we deal with it all the time. When companies go bankrupt,
this is an Elizabeth Warren obsession,
right?
Is the bankruptcy legislation, right?
When companies go bankrupt, and we've seen it, everybody gets theirs, right? We are the last line of creditors, in the line.
You're not even treated as creditors.
No, we're treated as
right?
commodity. We're a commodity, right? Like, we'll throw them 3 cents on the dollar and tell them there's nothing we can do. So, the whole system has failed us. And even when there were times like under strong Democratic leadership, our issues weren't taken in consideration. Now, one thing that Biden did unbelievable for us on is, funding these pension funds so that they didn't collapse. And I say that all the time. And that got thrown in my face when I spoke at the RNC right after it. A lot of Democrats, like Sherrod Brown, was not happy that I spoke there. He came to my office and he said, I helped with that legislation, Butch Lewis. No doubt you helped us with that legislation, and we are grateful. We got pensions. They're going to be solvent till 2051. People aren't going to have to worry about. That was the right thing to do. However, who broke them? Who broke these pensions? What do you mean? and I had the same conversation with a lot of other Democratic senators. I said, in 1980, Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts passed legislation to deregulate the trucking industry. The Teamsters union lost 400,000 trucking jobs, and that deregulation started filtering into other industries. If you lose 400,000 jobs, that's 400,000 contributions times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks a year.
Sure.
That is a significant drain on these funds. Each year it goes on, and then take into consideration a lot of these companies, good companies, were forced into bankruptcy, where none of these monies were captured because the bankruptcy laws didn't pass. And I said, look, I'm very grateful you fixed the problem that you helped create. And I use this analogy. I'm playing street hockey in my neighborhood, 1980. 8 years old, right?
Right.
I break my mother's window. 40 years later, I say, I'm going to fix that window. Should I look for accolades from my mother for fixing a problem that I helped create? And Joe Biden was a senator. He signed off on the legislation of deregulation. And that was when Reagan was a president, who, by the way, we endorsed Reagan as well. So it's.
Everybody let you down on that one, huh?
Yeah. But my point is, once you took a position like we did, because the polling we did, and we did 3 intense pollings. We did a straw poll in the union halls where we could have tipped. It should have been tipped like 80-20 to Biden. And it was like, 35% Biden, 30% Trump, and then independent factored in as well. We're like, all right, this isn't a good gauge. So then we do a publication every month, every quarter, I believe, or every month. It goes to 1.6 million people. And we got record participation with a code, a QR code. And Harris was in the race with Waltz at this point in time. And it went 65-35 Republican. And we're like, all right, let's do one more poll. So we utilize the same pollster that the Harris-Waltz campaign utilized. And it was the same result as we got from the QR code of our members. So we were like, all right, we've got to represent 65% of our members. We also have to represent the 35%. This is too close. We're gonna take a pass. We're gonna not make an endorsement. Local unions, joint councils, they're autonomous. You do what you want to do in this one.
And they kind of did, if I'm not mistaken.
They did, but the majority of them. California was probably the most outgoing for Harris and Waltz, and there were some other, maybe Illinois, but most people, chose to take a step back as well because, again, our members are their constituents.
What's your relationship these days with the rest of the labor movement? Right, that's sometimes with the collective of the AFL-CIO and all of that, and there've been back and forth over time, and to me, there's the Teamsters, then there's the AFL-CIO. Is that still the pecking order in your mind? You're not a member of AFL-CIO, right?
Yeah, we're not a member of the AFL-CIO. They do good work. There's no doubt about it. We definitely represent different interests with our members versus their members.
Why aren't you a part of AFL-CIO?
It happened when probably about, I think, 20 years ago when there was a rift between, I think, President Trump at that point in time and some of the other labor unions. I think the laborers, the carpenters, the Teamsters, and there were a couple other affiliates. I think SEIU formed their own Change to Win coalition.
Well, I remember that really blew things up.
Yeah,
right?
And withdrew the international unions. But, a lot of the affiliates, and that was one of them in Boston, we stayed with the AFL-CIO locally for some time. And that's still the practice. That's the encouragement from us. We just, we do our own thing. We've got our own staff. We've got our own ability to lobby. We've got our own ability. There are times we work on projects together. I think, to your question, I'm going to answer it honestly. I think, there's some ill will from other unions on us not endorsing Vice President Harris.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, Chuck, I will help any union. I will help any affiliate, even if we do have a difference of opinions. But, I've heard some chatter. Now, again, when you see them, everybody's your best friend, right? But, you go online and you see everything. I don't take it personal. I get it. My whole focus and goal is I've got to serve the people that I'm elected to serve. And I got to make decisions and recommend decisions in the best interest of them. And, I believed at the time, and I still believe that we made the best decision possible. And look, we're in a good spot. I mean, some of these unions that criticize me, we've helped broker meetings
Right.
with the White House, to stop any kind of attack on a certain industry or to help facilitate a relationship. So, look, I'm sure there's some hurt feelings, but even if we did endorse in this election, it wouldn't have
Mhm.
moved the needle. We did what was best interest. And
Right.
look, we polled our members, and I think we made the right decision.
So if Andy Bashir, Wes Moore, I'll throw a Gretchen Whitmer, the
Don't
three of them,
forget,
and
don't forget Josh Shapiro.
Josh Shapiro, the four of them come to you and say, what do I do to make sure I'm not at the 35 of a 65-35 split in 2028?
I'm going to tell
Um,
them.
what
I'm
do
going
you
to
tell
tell
them?
them, go out, talk to your constituents, our members, have member to member, have face-to-face conversations, ask their opinions. Don't dictate what they should be doing for you. You work for them. You
Mhm.
need to win the trust back over. And that was part of the problem.
What is that? Give me an example of something. I mean, I've heard a similar look. There's sort of this stereotype of that. I joke these days of Democrats and Republicans. Republicans go out of their way to agree with the voter. Democrats go out of their way to convince the voter that they're right. And it's sort of a which is actually a much harder thing to do,
I'm going to give you
right?
a true testimonial.
Yeah.
I was speaking at a international unions convention probably about a month ago in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And I was explaining just what I explained to you, the polling and everything else. And after the whole, and it was like in front of about 5,000 people, I'm walking out, and a lady approaches me, and I could see it coming. You just see the body language. And she walked right up to me and pointed her finger and said, "What are you doing to educate those 65% of the members?" I said, "I'm not doing anything to educate them." I said, "What are the Democrats doing to find out why 65% of our members didn't support them? That's not
Mm-hmm.
up to me. That's up to the members." I said, "That's the problem here. It's my job to educate someone who made a choice based upon, personal and or maybe validated concerns with the party. What do you want me to do? Is educating mean telling what to do? Because that's not what we're going to do."
It's interesting. It's a dilemma. I know some unions have a similar split, particularly the trades, where a majority of their members were Trump, but the leadership all went to the Democrats.
Right.
And they do try to, quote, educate their members. Look, we know you may not like these issues, but do you know Speaker Pelosi is what got this done? And you may not like her, but here's why we're siding with her. Is that on a labor leader to explain or not?
Oh, you have to. I think you have to. In that scenario, like, I've been critical of both Republican and Democrats. However, I always acknowledge what they've done for us or haven't done for us. So, Chuck Schumer,
Mhm.
reminds me every time he sees me that, he fixed our pensions. Well, he didn't do it alone, right? Uh, and I'll tell people, look, Joe Biden was the most pro-union president. He actually signed the legislation that fixed our pensions. And then I'll give them the story on why these pensions were broke, like I said to you. So, yeah, it is up to us to give the tail of the tape on both sides as far as, yeah, they did this over here. But I could also point to 3 or 4 different things that they haven't done either. Like, I've had situations where it's saying, hey, Josh Hawley isn't for working people, or Roger Marshall isn't for working people. Oh, really? I said, they signed on to support letters for our members that were potentially going to strike at UPS. They signed on to help uh, our rail workers
Mm-hmm.
who didn't have a contract for 4 years. Although so-and-so, a Democrat, might have, said taking credit for something, they didn't sign on to this legislation, sign on to the support of this legislation. They didn't sign on to support Amazon workers. So we can always point. And I think, to your point, yeah, we're going to point out what people have done for us, but we're also going to point out what they haven't done for us.
We've spent a lot of time noting where Democrats have let you down. Why do you trust your new allies? Some
I
of
don't
your new
trust.
allies. Yeah.
Listen, I'm a Democrat, always going to be a Democrat. I don't trust anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to see when people say something. Look, and I was brought up, and I was brought up by a very, very strong Irish woman and my very strong Irish father who's no longer with us. But the one thing they always said is all you have left in your life is your reputation and your word.
Mm-hmm.
And the Republicans have a great opportunity right now because the Democratic Party's fractured. They're portraying themselves as wanting to be the party of working people. And the Democrats have to win the trust and support back of working people. And I'm leveraging both of those narratives. Hey, you said when you were running, you want to be the party of working people. Well, why aren't you jumping on board supporting, the Faster Labor Contracts Act as Republicans? Because we've got bipartisan support and growing in that. That's an opportunity for Republicans to actually say or to demonstrate, hey, we do support working people. And also, if they do that, are the Democrats going to come out and criticize that? No, they can't. But if the Republicans say, I'm not supporting it, or we don't get Republican support, they're just allowing the Democrats to weaponize that issue. And maybe that's the strategy. I don't know.
Let me get you out of here in two things. One, 2026 is this a low? I saw, for instance, in Michigan, various Teamsters, the state went one way, a couple of locals went another. Is that mostly how Teamsters endorsements work in a midterm year, or will your office sort of weigh in on certain Senate races, certain House races?
Yeah, we're gonna weigh in on certain Senate races, especially the senators and House members that support us, whether you have a D, an R, or an I. The beauty of the Teamsters Union, we have 319 local unions and 30 something joint councils, regional councils. They like their pride of autonomy, and we give them that. However, if we are working on legislation like Faster Labor Contracts Act or warehouse protection, and we're getting support from people that are currently in office that might have a DNR, we're gonna weigh in and say, look, this is what these people have done for us. But at the end of the day, it's usually left up to the local unions and the joint councils.
I'm going to paint a scenario for you. The athletes of the Big Ten decide they're going to organize. I think it's coming, frankly. Collective bargaining in college sports. There's a lot of money at stake. There's, frankly, no protections for these athletes right now in various ways. Do the Teamsters want, would athletes who got a collective, were able to sort of get a collective, be recognized as a union? Would you want them as Teamsters members, or is that too far? Too far? There's no union out there that you wouldn't. Okay. Explain why. Explain how the Teamsters will be able to help the Big Ten football players.
I played college football for one semester, right? It's a full-time job, a lot of demands, and there's no guarantees, right? Do you want to go put sports aside? Do you want to go work for an employer where there's a lot of demand and no return? No, you don't. So that's right in our wheelhouse as far as represent. We'll represent anybody. We were accused of, if a fire hydrant wanted to negotiate a contract, the Teamsters would represent them, right? No, we would love to, because think about it. You're improving.
Don't you believe that's coming?
I think it's coming. And look, a good friend of mine, I know you're a huge University of Miami fan. Gino Toretta is a very good friend of mine.
Oh, I love Gino. He and I are pals.
Way back when. I mean, he was saying, this is a full-time job. It was 40 plus hours per week, and the demands that are put on you, like you don't have the ability to say no to these college coaches or even the administration. So it's like, there's no rights of these they own you. And no one should be owned. No one should be mandated what to say and what to do. And let's face it. I mean, college sports, the NCAA, this NIL money. I mean, I think you're 100% right. It's coming. And
no, look, I mean, there's too much.
We definitely want to be the union that represents them. My son plays college hockey, and he's 40 hours a week. Up in the morning training, practice, and then classes are like 8 o'clock at night. There's 12, 13-hour days. But the majority of the time during the season is focused on the season.
No, and with all this, I mean, when you're talking multi-billion-dollar TV contracts now for these conferences. So I think the only way this works is if it's a players union by conference,
Right.
but who knows? I mean, we'll
By
see.
region.
I mean, yeah,
Region.
or maybe it's by region or something like that. Yeah, it'd be nice if our conferences were by region, but
Oh, wouldn't it? It'd be
yeah,
easy. It'd be easy.
we got that.
Maybe BC would be a competitor.
Were you a BC player? Where'd you play?
No, I went to University of UMass.
UMass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying hard to be an FBS. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I went to the UMass Boston campus. I went to the University of New Haven first and then went to UMass.
Well, by the time this airs, we'll know whether the Red Sox have beaten the Yankees or not. But
that's going to be a tough one, huh?
Yeah.
It's going to be
but how great. A 2 of 3 between old rivals like this. I mean, no matter what.
Well, you hate to see someone lose in that situation,
What? Get out of here.
What
kind of Red Sox fan? What do you mean you hate to see someone lose?
No, you do, because, I mean, look, they're playing their hearts out, right? Because they hate each other.
Look at you. Like, you're empathy. You're filled with empathy. Where's the Boston hate, man?
Oh, listen, let's talk hockey. Let's talk football. There's no other team than Boston Bruins and the New England Patriots,
So that's where that's where the hate.
I'm at. Yeah. Baseball's baseball. Baseball, great American sport. We used to say in my neighborhood, the kids that can't skate end up playing baseball.
Ooh, wow. I know exactly where you grew up. Hey, Sean O'Brien, this was great, man. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate you, my friend. This is awesome.
All right.
I'm a huge fan.